Well, NASA has been teamed with UN COPUOS since its inception. Now, NASA was established under the National Space Act in 1958. President Eisenhower did that, and then the very next year, the United Nations formed UN COPUOS, and so we were a member at that time, and we have been ever since. So we support them. There are a number of initiatives that they undertake that we think are critical. Not the least of which is looking at mitigation of orbital debris. That's particles in space that can damage spacecraft, particularly those that have humans aboard, like the International Space Station. They recently started looking at space weather, so they actually have a working group that's very interested in space weather, which is something that's become increasingly important to us because you're talking about the impact of bursts of energy coming from the sun or energy coming from other planets that could impact our ability to communicate here on Earth. So they do a number of different things in which NASA has a vested interest. I think NASA's role has actually stepped up some from what it used to be. Back in the earlier days when NASA was formed in response to Sputnik, it was the Cold War, and the United States felt that we needed a capability to respond to the threat of the Soviet Union. So that's what brought NASA into being, subsequently brought about the human spaceflight, Mercury, Gemini, the Apollo program. Today, however, there are mutual threats to humanity. We talk about asteroids or near-Earth objects. We talk about orbital debris. Every nation in the world today relies on space for communications, for weather, for any number of other things. And all of those assets, spaceborne assets, are threatened by little particles that are floating around in the same orbit as our satellites. So more and more, every nation in the world is realizing that they have a vested interest in keeping space as clean and peaceful as possible. And what has become our challenge, it's really easy to work by yourself. It is very difficult to work in conjunction with somebody else in partnership. We demonstrated that it can be done, however, on the International Space Station. It's a conglomerate of 5 entities and the agencies that run it, but 15 nations helped to build it, and today there are more than 20 nations that operate intermittently on the International Space Station. Being the leader of that group of nations is challenging. And so I think the United States' role has increased in trying to help coordinate the activities of multiple nations as more and more get interested in using space and taking advantage of the assets that are in space.